What's going on, all of you fantastic freelancers? My name is William, and today we are going to be going over every last facet of Anthem's endgame that we know of so far. And before we get started, the footage in the background is presented by the EA Game Changers program. EA was kind enough to fly me out to San Francisco to capture some endgame footage and Grandmaster 1 footage for you all last month. I will try to have this gameplay correspond with the topics as best as I'm able. However, as with all of my other videos, EA is not paying me, nor have they ever paid me to make anything or say anything about Anthem. This is my hobby, and all thoughts and opinions are my own as an experienced gamer and analytical journalist. Now then, with that out of the way, let's get into it. Over the last few weeks, there has been an uproar about what content there is in Anthem, or more specifically, that the game doesn't seem to have all that much to offer at launch. Now, if you share that point of view, I could completely understand if you don't follow Anthem as closely as some of us do. But when in all reality, I feel like most people complaining about there not being enough content at launch really mean that there's not enough activity variety, which I strongly disagree with. But let me try to break it down as best as I can, and if you still have questions, comments, or concerns, I will answer them to the best of my abilities in the comments section below. As Anthem falls into the role of an RPG looter shooter, this means a good portion of your time will be spent grinding your way to more powerful gear so you can tackle those harder and harder challenges. However, Anthem has another card up its sleeve as a live service game, but more on that in a minute. The problem many potential players are having is if they spend all of these hours upon hours grinding for gear to take on the harder and harder challenges, they need some sort of variety so it doesn't feel repetitive and like they're doing the same thing over and over again. And I'm right there with them. A popular complaint that I mentioned previously was that Anthem won't have enough content at launch. This is backed by there only being 3 strongholds, legendary contracts, world events, free play, daily, weekly, and monthly challenges, 3 endgame difficulty modes, no raids, and so on. It's not a matter of Anthem not having enough content, as you will see in a few minutes. It's more along the lines that they're afraid there won't be enough variety or enough of a challenge associated with the endgame. First, I think it's fitting to go over the difficulties, as there seems to be a fair bit of confusion about them. And if you already know all of this, don't skip ahead. There are new details here as well as some of my own personal insights. When you start the game, there will be 3 difficulty modes available to you: easy, normal, and hard. Once you hit level 30, you will have Grandmasters 1, 2, and 3 unlocked to you, which will each have their own modifiers and gearing recommendations. Grandmaster 1 recommends the majority of your gear be of epic rarity. Rank 2 advises masterwork, while Grandmaster Rank 3 encourages legendary, and for good reason too. The higher your difficulty settings are at, the more challenging the enemy AI gets, and the more powerful variants of these enemies will spawn with different behaviors and movesets. Your reward, however, for doing this harder content: better loot drops at higher rarities, achievements, and so on. Simple, right? Well, that's because it is. Now, there have been a few changes to the Grandmaster's various difficulty scaling rankings, but it isn't anything alarming. They will still be challenging all the same. Now, as far as my number 1 tip for the endgame before we get into what it actually consists of, your number 1 goal is to find the inscriptions, the loot, random rolls, and attachments to make you as broken as possible. That's right, you will need to be as broken or as beefed up as possible to complete the Grandmaster difficulties. This can take the form of you getting your ultimate back after 30 seconds, almost hovering forever as a storm, inscriptions that work in tangent with each other so you never have to use your weapons again, and so on. But in order for you to get these items and to get them at the rarity that you need them to complete this content, you need to know what activities there are and if there is enough variety so it doesn't feel like a chore doing them over and over again. So let's start off by addressing the 3 strongholds at launch. There is the Tyrant Mine, Temple of Scar, and the Heart of Rage. The Tyrant Mine stronghold is what you experience during the VIP and open demo, where you are sent to put an end to a swarm tyrant. The Temple of Scar, which is currently playing behind me, is a stronghold where you are sent to defeat a powerful Ascari deep within the Scar Temple. And the third is called the Heart of Rage, which seems pretty self-explanatory, no? However, that is all that we are getting at launch, and some feel that this isn't enough, especially with there not being a specific loot table tied to any of the bosses or challenges within these strongholds, but instead, they pull from one large universal loot table. The rarity odds, again, will be based on what difficulty you are playing the stronghold on, with harder difficulties rewarding you with rarer and better loot. Another thing, though, is that strongholds have been compared to things like strikes in Destiny, which I don't think is a fair assessment. It would typically take me 15 to 20 minutes to do a full strike, even if I was a mid-tier guardian in D2, while strongholds in Anthem take anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes on regular difficulties, and 45 minutes to an hour on Grandmaster 1. This, of course, is not taking into account Grandmasters 2 and 3, which we didn't get to play at at the capture event, but I am sure they will take just as long, if not longer, if you are geared correctly. If anything, I'd compare Strongholds to being somewhere in the middle in terms of a length comparison to a game like Destiny's Strikes and Raids, while the Grandmaster 2 and 3 content being closer to Destiny's Prestige or Ranked Raids. In addition, as you go up in Grandmaster difficulties, the enemy AI will get smarter. More powerful enemy variants will spawn with newer movesets and behaviors, not to mention they will get a significant health increase. It is also worth pointing out that there will be another Stronghold releasing in March, which is a good time to point this out before we move on to Anthem's raids. As I mentioned before, Anthem is a live service game without any paid DLCs or content in its future, aka all future updates will be free. This also means that they can release new content whenever they want. So if they want to add a new story mission tomorrow, they can. If they want to release a new Stronghold next month, guess what? They can. They can do all of this with no strings attached and with a flip of a switch. Thankfully, before I started working on this video, Ben Irving tweeted out this Anthem gameplay calendar with Act 1 releasing in March. With it comes 3 updates. Update 1, Evolving World. Update 2, Stronger Together. And Update 3, The Cataclysm. And you'll notice below it details what all we will be getting starting in the month of March, such as new events, quality of life improvements, new rewards, an expanded progression system, a new stronghold, guilds and leaderboards, new missions, and of course, the Cataclysm events. Now, we aren't quite sure exactly when each one of these updates will be coming in March, but it has been discussed that the game will possibly have its resets and maintenance on Tuesdays, but we will just have to wait and see. The point is, I'm not worried at all for the future of Anthem's future variety content. Back to what will be included at launch. As previously mentioned, Anthem will not have traditional style raids at launch. When I say traditional, I mean more than a 4-man squad going into a raid and taking on insane challenges together. According to Ben Irving's interview with Eurogamer, a link to that article will be in the description below, he states that the problem with raid is it has a connotation, that it requires more people or has 5 bosses in a circle. That's why I'm using the word aspirational content. In other games, a raid is that, and while I think this is important in a game like ours, we have an idea which is different, but ticks the need of why a raid is important. It's a similar thing. It's the thing you'll schedule with your buddies, will be hard, requires tons and tons of coordination, and then there will be ways to show off if you are good at that or not. Eurogamer follows it up by adding that this aspirational content will still be planned as a 4-man experience, which I don't have a huge issue with. Would I like to see more than 4-player content in the future? Absolutely. However, with Strongholds and other endgame activities that we will be touching on here in a second being just as difficult as raids if not harder, I'm content without raids being at launch, and I don't see them as a necessity for that extra layer of challenge when those challenges are already being met with what we already have. And keep in mind, series like Destiny and The Division didn't launch with raids immediately either, and both were fine without them for a good while. Though comparing any of these games to each other is just a waste of time. But again, raid-like content would be nice, but not a necessity at launch. Moving on to Legendary Contracts, which we actually got to play through on Grandmaster 1 during the San Fran event, and I can safely say that it was the most fun I had during the entire event. Also the most frustrating at times, but hands down the most fun. If you want to watch more gameplay specifically from it, I'll leave a card above so you can go check out that video which gives my commentary on the specific mission in full. Legendary Contracts, though, are in ways like world events but beefed up. Basically, you will be doing 3 missions back-to-back or world events that you would ordinarily find in free play, but modified and much harder. For example, our first part we were sent to find some Sentinels who were overwhelmed by scars. Sounds familiar from the demos, right? But you will quickly notice that there were more of them, different variants, and much smarter than what you dealt with during the entire demo. The second one was to silence a Shaper Relic, only we had to deal with several powerful turrets, a horde of scars, and more. Obviously, this was not your average Silence the Shaper Relic world event. Our last part of the Legendary Contract saw the team go after a Dominion spy, which was one we hadn't experienced during the regular free play, and very well could have been an exclusive world event that you can only get at random from Legendary Contracts as opposed to regular free play. And let me tell you, these contracts were tough. We actually didn't finish this Legendary Contract on Grandmaster 1 because we were slightly undergeared and the challenge was far too great. But that's not my point about Legendary Contracts. Legendary Contracts will give you plenty of variety, as you will rarely play the same one ever again. The 3 missions and their order are randomized, and the difficulty, same as every other type of content in the game, is going to determine what type of challenge you will experience and increase the odds of better loot dropping. Next on our list is world events and free play, and I'm not referring to things like cataclysms quite yet. I mean world events that you will stumble upon and can generally complete within 10 minutes if not less. I guess I can loop this into Anthem's world as well. A comment I have heard with great consistency after the demos is that Anthem's world feels empty and less populated than expected. Trust me, that isn't a problem in full game, or at least the build that we got to play in San Francisco. I think just about every few minutes a new world event would pop up that we would have to go and take care of, not to mention vastly more enemies around every corner. And again, the demo was meant to give you a taste of which that was all the way back in December, not the current build. If you need proof outside of the content you are seeing from the capture event, check back with the gear stream Ben and Darren did a while back. There were enemies around literally every corner. The world is also infinitely more vast than the small area we were given in the demo. Granted, it is more of the same in terms of the jungle biome, but there are variations, desert-like areas, possible volcanic areas, and more to explore. Not to mention temples, ruins, caves, and more, all with their own enemies to loot and shoot. However, to be completely honest with you, in the endgame, I'd say free play is more for you to explore, test out weapons and builds, completing kill challenges and other challenges for blueprints, and resource gathering more than anything else. There can be things like world events that could drop a masterwork or legendary, but you would get more consistency out of them with things like contracts, strongholds, and other endgame content where enemies are more consistent. Now, something that has been a hot-button topic in the Anthem community since E3 2017 is the theory that Shaper Storms are somehow linked to the endgame, or act as oysters holding the pearl of raids on the inside. And while John Warner has recently said not to dismiss the idea of them holding raid-like content, we simply don't know as of right now. Trust me though, I'm right there with you all in wanting to know exactly what the Shaper Storms will hold. However, here's how all of that good stuff will work. Here is how Shaper Storms will take effect, or at least from what we understand as of right now. If you stuck around long enough on Sunday for the open demo, you will have gotten to see a cataclysm open up above Bastion, which brought to life a variety of titans. How the world of Anthem works is that the Anthem of Creation can be triggered to create cataclysms, such as the Heart of Rage, which has been mentioned a lot recently, or take on other forms such as Shaper Storms. The point is, the devs can do whatever they want, whenever they want, and trigger these events. And I doubt that they would just do them without giving you a hefty reward for enduring everything the Anthem of Creation can sling at you. Another small thing I should point out right now in terms of Anthem's variety is that with the Anthem of Creation in effect, Anthem will have a type of spontaneity and variety that no other looter shooter has on the market right now. Anything could happen or change at a moment's notice, which, if that isn't variety, I don't know what is. As far as future endgame content, there's been a discussion in the past about things such as horde modes, which, to be completely honest with you all, many of us in the Your Anthem community were surprised that they won't have that at launch, seeing that it was a beloved thing in the Mass Effect series, though something similar to it is in the works after other more immediately important content is completed, according to BioWare Ben on Discord. There has also been talk about endless dungeons, but it's more of the same story as above. My point is that there will be plenty to do in Anthem's endgame to get the gear that you need without it feeling like a repetitive grind. And most of us, even me who will be playing the game non-stop when it releases, will not be able to complete the game anytime soon. There are a plethora of weapons, abilities, attachments, blueprints, inscriptions, missions, challenges, and more to complete and collect. And even then, building your javelins, creating loadouts, and getting them to look just the way you want is going to take plenty enough time. But what do you all think about Anthem's endgame content? Do you feel like there's going to be enough variety to make the grind enjoyable? Let me know in the comments section below, as I am truly interested in hearing what you all have to say, and will respond if there's conversational potential. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more in-depth informational videos just like this one, be sure to subscribe to Your Anthem to get notifications whenever we upload a video. As always, a monumental thank you to my patrons for their generous donations and support of the channel. I am truly humbled by your generosity, and your donations go a long way to bringing newer and better things to this channel. One last thank you to my good friend Steven for reading over this 6-page script and giving critiques as necessary, not to mention making all of the thumbnails for this channel, and for being an overall incredible guy. Thank you again, my friend. At any rate, I hope all of you fantastic freelancers have a phenomenal day as ever, and remember, we are strong alone, but we are stronger together.